2 centuries after a legendary hero defeated the evil Jaryu, a young healer named Laust is expelled from his group for being too weak. The boy teams up with Narsena, a martial arts expert, and they embark on a journey to find their place in the world. We see a group of goblins destroying a stagecoach, and a little girl watches the chaos they are causing. The goblins spot her and prepare to kill her, but a mysterious young man stands in their way. At a guild, Narsena asks Laust if he wants to be part of her team. The question paralyzes the entire room, as no one can believe someone would want to team up with him. She noticed that the boy was about to put up a sign looking for companions, and without thinking, she offers herself. She introduces herself and tells him she is an expert in martial arts. He introduces himself and says he is a healer, or something like that. A woman intervenes in the conversation. Her name is Amherst, and she is an employee of the Adventurers Guild. She warns Narsena that Laust is known as the Useless, since he can only use the most basic healing spell. She tells Narsena that, like all orphans from the labyrinth, he has been an adventurer since childhood, but even so, he can't use better spells. Until recently, he belonged to a group called Lightning Blades, but they kicked him out. That's why he has such a bad reputation in the city as the most useless healer. She tells Narsena that if she teams up with him, she won't make any money. Narsena replies that she doesn't need money and shows a bag full of coins. Amherst warns her to be careful with that money, as adventurers can be bad and she could get into trouble. Narsena enthusiastically thanks her for all the advice. Noticing Narsena's new equipment, Amherst realizes she is a novice adventurer and offers to introduce her to a suitable group, in exchange for a small commission, of course. Narsena declines because she has wanted to team up with Laust for a long time, and she rushes back to talk to him. They go to the counter together, where they are given the registration form, because without it, they can't be assigned missions, and the guild can't intervene in payment disputes. Laust starts filling out the registration, and Narsena watches, feeling very happy and proud, thinking she finally found him. Laust asks her to fill in her details, and nervously, she does. When they finish, Amherst extends her hand to collect her commission. Laust pays her a few coins, and with that, the process is complete. Narsena is thrilled to finally team up with him, and they shake hands to seal the deal. They leave the guild and walk through the city. Laust tells her that no one has been able to finish the Mardat labyrinth, so no one knows who the final monster is. There are still many unexplored areas, which is why the city has become a magnet for adventurers. That's how Mardat became the largest labyrinth city in the region. Narsena asks if they can enter the labyrinth right away, reminding him that Amherst warned her she was a novice adventurer, and it would be better if they went to the Eastern Plains first. He explains that due to the energy emanating from the city's labyrinth, various monsters are attracted from the outside. There are the Western Mountains, the Northern Forest, the Southern Marshes, and the Eastern Plains where lower-level monsters appear, making it the best place for training novices. However, it's so vast that it's hard to find monsters. In the labyrinth, there are monsters everywhere, but if they don't go too deep, they won't have much trouble, as those are low-level monsters. Finally, they reach the entrance of the labyrinth. Laust is ready to enter, but Narsena stops him and suggests she go first since she is the fighter, and he is the healer. It's better for him to stay as far from danger as possible. Laust agrees that this is common practice, but Narsena doesn't let him add anything, and he allows it. They begin exploring the dark corridors of the dungeon, and Laust notices that Narsena looks happy, excited, and inspired, but he wonders if she can really fight. A group of goblins appears in front of them, and then Narsena starts delivering powerful punches and agile kicks, easily defeating the enemies. Laust's doubts disappear in that moment. He collects the gem left behind by one of the enemy's bodies, and Laust explains that it's a magic gem, and adventurers make their living by selling them to the guild. She asks what the guild does with them after buying them. Laust explains that they have many uses, as they are imbued with magic. He is surprised that Narsena doesn't know this, as anyone wanting to be an adventurer would be aware of it. Narsena admits that studies were never her strong suit. After a while, they've collected several goblin gems. Narsena asks how much they are worth, and he replies that since they're from goblins, not much, and that bigger monsters give better rewards. Even so, these gems are enough to pay for their lodging for the night. Still, they decide to go a little further. Narsena is excited and promises to protect him from everything. They walk down a corridor, and suddenly Laust stops her, warning her to be careful where she steps. He places a stone on the block she was about to step on, triggering a trap. They manage to get around it by walking along the edge. Narsena is surprised by her companion's insight. He explains that he's been an adventurer for a long time and noticed the block's color was slightly different from the others. Thanks to his experience, he knows about the other adventurer classes, in this case, thieves. They enter a room and find an orc patrolling. Laust is surprised, as orcs are mid-level monsters known for their strength and resilience, and it's rare to see one at such a low level. Still, he trusts that together they can defeat it, and Narcena fully trusts his decisions. Narcena reveals herself and starts attacking the orc. She notices that it's tough but also slow. The orc attacks, but she dodges, and its hammer slams into the ground, sending a rock flying toward her, causing a wound on her arm. The orc keeps attacking until it corners her, raising its hammer to finish her off. Narcena closes her eyes, expecting the blow, but it never comes. She opens her eyes and sees the hammer on the ground, and Laust stabbing the orc in the neck. Narcena continues to be amazed by Laust's skills and asks if he's really a healer. He reminds her that he can do a bit of everything, including fighting. She thinks he does more than just a bit. Laust notices the wound on her arm. She says it's just a scratch and will heal soon, but he insists on healing her, giving her no choice. They go to collect their reward, a much larger gem than the goblin ones. Laust takes the gem and says they've earned enough money and suggests returning home, but Narcena excitedly asks to continue. Laust can't say no to her, so they proceed. At dusk, they return to the guild to sell the gems. Amherst is surprised by all they've collected in just half a day and, irritated, asks Laust if he took Narcena to the labyrinth. She notices one of the gems is from an orc, and this leads her to suspect that he made her descend to the mid-levels. He explains that the orc was on an upper level, and Narcena confirms it. Amherst confesses that there have been other similar reports. She tells them that the guild leaders have been discussing it, and it seems something strange is happening in the dungeon. Returning to the matter of selling the gems, Amherst is very happy to pay them. Narcena wonders why the sudden change in attitude, and Laust explains that when they buy gems, the employees' wages increase depending on the total sale. The more gems they collect, the more money Amherst makes. She pays them a good-sized bag of coins. Laust can't believe it so much, and Amherst reminds him that half belongs to Narcena. Laust is aware, but admits that even his half is much more than he used to make. Then the memory depresses him. Narcena asks what's wrong, and Amherst tells her that when he was in Lightning Blades, they didn't usually pay him what he was owed because they were scamming him. This angers Narcena, who reprimands Amherst, saying it's the guild's responsibility to mediate payments between adventurers. Amherst agrees and asks Laust if he wants the guild to intervene, but he refuses. He says he now has a new group and wants to leave the past behind. They leave the guild, and on another floor, a man watches Laust with resentment. He comes down to see Amherst, who is happily counting her commission. She's surprised to see him. It's her boss, Hansum. He asks if she sent Laust with a new group, and she replies no. And even if she had, no one would accept him. She tells him that a new girl appeared, and Hansum asks if she means the girl with blue hair. She confirms, and he asks no further questions before leaving. Laust and Narcena arrive at an inn, where a girl happily greets him and asks if Narcena is his new companion. Laust is surprised she knows, and she replies that news spreads quickly, especially if Laust, the useless, got a new companion. The girl offers them a table, and Laust accepts, but first says he wants to book a room. She tells him to go in the back to talk to her mother. From the kitchen, a woman named Mary greets him. Hearing that he wants a room, she asks if it will be shared. Narcena blushes at the thought of sharing a room, but he replies that it will be one for each of them. Mary offers them their rooms and a hot meal, while Narcena tells herself she wouldn't mind sharing a room with him. After dinner, they go to their rooms and say goodnight at the door. Narcena lies down and remembers that when she was a child and her carriage was attacked by goblins, Laust saved her and healed her wounds. Excited and inspired, she promised to become an adventurer and protect him. She gets up and starts training. Not long ago, she heard that Laust was kicked out of his group, so she ran to the city to finally team up with him. Laust still doesn't recognize her, as she has grown a lot and her appearance has changed over time. Her hair color has even changed. She knows that he has changed too, becoming stronger and even capable of defending himself. Narcena reconsiders. He still needs someone to take care of him, and that will be her. She puts on her pajamas and wonders why people call him useless when he is really so talented. A group of adventurers confront a Hydra. However, they seem to be having a hard time. One of the girls gets injured, and Laust, who is nearby, tries to heal her. However, he uses the wrong spell, which frustrates the girl. She yells at him, asking what's the point of keeping him around if he's useless. Meanwhile, the blonde adventurer urges them to get back into the fight, which upsets the girl even more. The blonde then asks Laust to take charge, but Laust replies that he can't do anything and reproaches him for not bringing antidotes. The blonde becomes furious and accuses Laust of only knowing how to use heal. The mage quickly casts a spell, but it doesn't work. Seeing this, the blonde, now frustrated, orders a retreat, and the mage also flees. Laust, with no other choice, grabs Siberia, the girl he tried to heal earlier, and they both escape too. Back at the guild, Margulis decides to kick Laust out of his group, Thunderblades. Siberia tells him that he is a failed healer, and that because of him, they were unable to defeat the Hydra. Laust blames them, saying that they were not in good shape. Both then seek the opinion of Armia, the little mage, who, feeling intimidated, has no choice but to blame Laust as well. It all seemed like a memory of that time, and it still affected him. Laust remembers that it was not his first similar experience. Once, another group of adventurers had invited him to join them, but it was a trap, as they used him as bait, a common fate for labyrinth orphans like him. That group of adventurers fell that day at the hands of the ogres. For Laust, this was normal, but unbearable. He didn't like suffering or being afraid, and obviously, he didn't want to fall. The fact that no one saw him as a true adventurer made him feel depressed. What struck him the most was the day he saved little Narcena. He knew that the life of a labyrinth orphan like him was worthless. However, if he could give his life to save that little girl, then it wouldn't be in vain. Still, he fainted in the middle of the fight. When he woke up, he realized that the Night Order had found out about what had happened and had come to help, so it wasn't him who saved the girl. However, little Narcena thanked him because, thanks to him, the knights had arrived in time. When Laust saw that Narcena had a small wound, he tried to heal her, and after doing so, he told her that healing was the only thing he could do. It is unclear if Laust told her what had happened with the other group of adventurers, but Narcena began to cry, unable to believe that there were such evil people who would do that to someone. It was then that she decided that when she grew up, she would become an adventurer and form a party with him, promising to protect him. After Narcena left, Laust learned she was the daughter of a noble, making it seem impossible for her to ever become an adventurer. Still, Narcena's words gave him the encouragement to keep going and try his luck again. He found someone to train him. Despite only being able to use heal as a healer, he had acquired new skills as an adventurer. When he felt ready, he went to join his first party, Thunderblades. Laust firmly believes that if that little girl had not encouraged him back then, he might have given up. He wished he could see her again. At that moment, Narcena knocked on the door to greet him and invited him to have breakfast together. Further into the labyrinth, they decided to go deeper. They came across a transportation circle, apparently placed there by a magician. Thanks to these circles, it's possible to travel faster and easier, as long as there's another circle acting as a receiver. Narcena thought it would be useful to have one in the city, but quickly reconsidered, thinking that monsters might appear in the city. Laust explained that there was nothing to fear, as monsters couldn't use the circles. He also mentioned that while teleportation circles were very useful, the knowledge to create more of them had been lost. After that, they both proceeded to use the circle. They reached the middle levels, where the monsters were a bit stronger. Soon our heroes encountered some liches. Laust quickly explained to Narcena that liches do not have a physical body, as they are made of energy, so physical attacks wouldn't be effective. The only option was to retreat, as they were at a disadvantage without offensive spells. However, Narcena disagreed, firmly believing that she could defeat them. When someone trains enough, they can use their prana, the energy of their own body. Martial artists, when they imbue their blows with prana, can destroy spiritual beings. That was how Narcena managed to defeat the Lich. Quickly, Laust realized that Narcena had been injured, so he used a magic item to enhance his healing spell. The item was made from a magic stone, the same kind that adventurers give to the guild. Once she recovered, Narcena wondered how much she could get for that stone as she picked it up from the ground, looking very happy. After a brief stop at the guild, the two headed to the market, where it seemed like a small dispute was taking place. Laust explained that this was quite common, as adventurers who had caused trouble elsewhere often gathered in that town, annoying people and real adventurers alike. Laust tells him that they should forget about it since they had just received their payment, and that they should treat themselves to a nice dinner. They both arrived at the inn, where they ordered a hearty meal. Mary, seeing all they ordered, wondered if they could afford it all. Laust assured her not to worry, and asked her to bring them something to drink. Narcena, seeing this, wanted one too, but drinks are not for children. Later, Narcena asked Laust about the buildings scattered throughout the city, as they had no doors, windows, or even inscriptions. Laust replied that he had once wondered the same thing. It turns out that even those who built them do not know what purpose they serve or who ordered their construction. He believes that the best measure would be to fortify the city, as it does not even have a moat, leaving it vulnerable in a battle. Narcena mentioned that there was no need for defense, as the city was full of adventurers. What would it matter what kind of creature attacked? Surely they would be defeated. Later, they both went to bed, but before Laust could enter his room, Narcena stopped him, looking like she wanted to say something. In the end, she couldn't and simply wished him good night. In her room, Narcena regretted not saying what she wanted. She wanted to sleep with Laust, but she didn't dare to tell him. Meanwhile, Laust was very happy, glad to belong to a party, and still grateful for Narsina's words of encouragement. Elsewhere, the Thunderblades had added a new healer to their party, and according to them, they would be able to defeat the Hydra this time. Margulis and his team, with the help of their new healer, once again face the Hydra, determined to defeat it this time. Immediately, Margulis begins to come up with a plan. He and Lyra will go to the front, Armia will cover them with magic, and Siberia will attack from behind with a surprise strike. However, Lyra stops the attack, stating that she cannot go to the front because she is a healer. Margulis is shocked to hear this, as Laust always took the front. Lyra is incredulous, struggling to accept that the former healer was forced to be on the front lines. Margulis explains that Laust often spent most of his time dodging attacks, and sometimes even counterattacked. In fact, he was the one who managed to cut off one of the Hydra's heads. In the end, Margulis agrees that Lyra should not go to the front, but will support them with antidotes. We now return to our heroes, who are delivering the loot from their latest adventure. Seeing the quality of the loot, Amherst warns Laust not to put Narsina at risk. However, Laust replies that since it's just the two of them, they're being more cautious. Amherst suggests that they might want to look for another member, such as a warrior or a mage. That way, they could take on more dangerous monsters and earn more money. For the moment, things seem to be going well. If they keep this up, they could rent an entire house and use it as a base, a luxury within reach of groups with good incomes. This would be great for both of them, as they would have more space to store items, save money, and if they wanted, they could even turn it into their little love nest. Laust reflects for a moment and mentions that the Thunderblades had their own house, although he lived in the closet. Hearing this, Amherst tells him that it was probably for the best that he was kicked out. Meanwhile, the Thunderblades have suffered yet another defeat. Margulis, visibly frustrated, wonders why they can't defeat this Hydra. Lyra, who is healing young Armia, replies that it's because he insists on facing it head-on, despite not being strong enough. Margulis and Siberia realize that Laust was actually a great help. Even though he often complained about his job and didn't realize that he was being taken advantage of, Margulis wonders why Laust had to leave. Siberia immediately reminds him that it was Margulis who kicked him out. That's when the blonde has a brilliant idea. They should ask Laust to come back. After all, they are the famous Thunderblades, so no one would dare to refuse their invitation. The next day, Armia wakes up to find that Lyra has been watching over her all night. She asks how she is, and after hearing that she is fine, offers to bring her a small plate of food. After wandering around the house, Armia realizes that neither Siberia nor Margulis are there. Meanwhile, they come across Laust and invite him back. Margulis promises to protect him with his life and make sure that the loot is divided fairly. He even starts bad-mouthing the new healer. But just then, Narsena arrives, announcing that Laust would never return to their party because he is now her beloved companion. Laust finally speaks up. Thanking them, he mentions that he appreciates their invitation to return. However, while he understands their intentions, he now has a new companion and does not plan on rejoining the Thunderblades. They do not accept this and warn Laust that Narsena is probably taking advantage of him. They imply that Laust, who they once thought was useless, is not so useless after all, and perhaps Narsena is even tricking him to keep his share of the loot, possibly with the guild involved as well. They urge Laust to open his eyes, saying that Narsena isn't his friend and is deceiving him. At that moment, Laust grabs Margulis by the arm and tells him that while he holds no grudge against them, he will not let anyone hurt Narsena. With that, Laust and Narsena leave together. Frustrated, Margulis heads to Amherst and asks him to introduce someone strong, someone who can keep up with him. He is determined to defeat the Hydra. Just then, a young boy volunteers. After observing him for a moment, Margulis decides to test him by challenging him on the spot, only to be instantly defeated. Everyone is stunned at the outcome. Initially embarrassed, Margulis decides to keep him on the team, as all he needs is someone skilled with a sword, regardless of the fact that the boy keeps his face covered. Plus, they have no other choice. If the Thunderblades fail to defeat the Hydra, their reputation will be ruined. That's when the boy introduces himself as Shig. Meanwhile, Narsena hears someone knocking on Laust's door. When she sees who it is, she realizes it's Sheila, and can't help but think that he might be trying to get ahead of her. In the end, it turns out that they both have a visitor. It's none other than Armia and Lyra. Armia asks Laust for help, wanting him to accompany them as he's still obsessed with the Hydra. Furthermore, he's still insistent on not buying antidotes, and might not stop until someone loses their life. Armia also mentions that it might already be too late, but she now understands how strong Laust is. If he hadn't cut off that Hydra's head, they would have all perished. She then asks him again to join them. Narcina then asks him why he insists on helping that group. Rather, why does he want to save Margulis, who seems to treat them poorly? Armia acknowledges that it is true that he has his problems. He is arrogant, reckless, cowardly, manipulative, among other things. However, he is still her teammate. Hearing this, Narcina cannot hide her anger, telling him that Laust was also her teammate, that she knew how they treated him, and now he comes talking about camaraderie. It is so much hypocrisy that it disgusts her. Armia quickly responds that she never agreed with that. She was always afraid to speak. She did not want to be kicked out of the group for saying something. Through tears, she apologizes, mentioning that she doesn't have much experience since this is her first group, so she didn't know if Laust was doing his job well or not. However, now she knows. She understands that Margulis is a bad adventurer and a bad person, but she can't turn her back on someone from her own group. Lyra mentions that Armia has been wanting to apologize for a long time. She understands how she feels, but still asks her to accept her apology. Laust stands up to tell her to stop crying. He said the same thing to Margulis yesterday. He doesn't hold a grudge against anyone, but he doesn't plan on returning to the Thunderblades. At that moment, Mari, with food in hand, says that no one leaves her restaurant with that long face, and kindly tells Armia to eat as much as she wants. Meanwhile, our protagonists talk to Lyra. They ask her if she can make Laust leave the Thunderblades. Lyra tells them that if she could do that, they wouldn't be there. It's a fact that Armia is a very kind girl. At that moment, Laust remembers how Margulis spoke badly of his new healer, so he asks Lyra if she is the new healer. After confirming that she is, Laust quickly says that she will probably have problems in that group too, and advises her to leave. However, she replies that she can't, because she can't just abandon Armia like that. Back at the Thunderblades house, Lyra recognizes Shig but mistakenly calls him Sieg. Margulis immediately corrects her, saying that he is Shig. He then orders everyone to prepare to fight the Hydra. Lyra asks Shig what he is doing there, but he pretends not to know her. It's obvious that he is lying. Upset, Lyra tells him he should stop acting like that, thinking he probably just accepted another terrible job. Shig turns away. However, when he turns his back, Lyra recognizes Ronaldo's sword and asks if he stole it. Shig quickly tells her that he inherited that sword from his mentor, so it is not stolen. But realizing that he has lost control, he impersonates Shig again and asks him who this Ronaldo is. Lyra finally puts the matter aside and, as she leaves, tells him to stop talking like that. And so, our heroes and the Thunderblades embark on their new adventure, especially the latter, who will once again face the Hydra. Our heroes find themselves fighting in a dungeon, and after defeating the last enemy, Narcina mentions that she can still fight. However, her hunger betrays her, as all the fighting has made her ravenous. Thus, the two decide to have a small picnic. Laust is shocked to see how much food they have just for the two of them, and Narcina tells him that all the food comes from the leftovers of what Armia was unable to finish. Laust comments that the Hydra is a very fierce and poisonous monster. Its muscles are highly developed, and its scales are so hard that they repel physical and magical attacks with ease, making it a very dangerous foe. Hearing this, Narcina worries for Armia, as she doesn't know if she will be okay. Laust immediately assures her that although Hydras are not overly abundant, they are more common than other high-level monsters, which has allowed them to be studied extensively. For example, its venom is known to be lethal if not treated quickly, so a special antidote was developed that is fairly easy to find in Mardat. However, Narcina tells him that Lyra mentioned they had not bought the antidote. Laust replies that they will have to rely on Lyra's antidote spell then. Still, Laust calms Narcina by saying that despite his personality, Margulis is a skilled swordsman, and when he is in top form and does not underestimate his enemy, he is formidable. Furthermore, Siberia is also known for her speed and agility, and although the multi-headed Hydra has keen vision, it is likely that she can catch it by surprise. Listening to the way Laust talks about the lightning swords, Narcina thinks he holds them in high regard. However, Laust replies that he is only speaking objectively. Afterwards, Narcina mentions that they always go to the same labyrinth and suggests going somewhere else, such as the wetlands. Meanwhile, the lightning blades are facing the Hydra. It seems like they are gaining the upper hand, but just as Shig is about to land a critical hit, he decides against it and tells Margulis that the Hydra is his prey, so it would be best if he took it down. The blonde, pleased with Shig's words, charges forward but fails to inflict any damage. Lyra, who is healing Siberia, wonders why Margulis is attacking head-on, and Siberia replies that that is his style. Lyra also wonders what Shig is doing, as he seems to be resting. Apparently, his attacks have done quite a bit of damage to the Hydra, as it is now slower. Their strategy seems to be working, as when the Hydra is distracted by Siberia, Margulis takes advantage and attacks with all his might, and Armia's spells are not entirely useless. So they might finally be able to defeat the Hydra. However, at that moment, the Hydra throws a rock that incapacitates Armia. Seeing that she is about to be attacked, she faints from fright. After that, fear begins to visibly manifest on her body. Shig mentions that some creatures are capable of devouring fear and converting it into energy, although it is rare for fear to be visible. Lyra quickly realizes that the Hydra is absorbing Armia's mana, which is causing her to mutate, as monsters that absorb large amounts of magic tend to transform to enhance their abilities. Now, in its new form, the Hydra is much stronger. Shig asks Lyra to take care of Armia and tells Margulis that it would be best to retreat. However, Margulis does not listen, arguing that they are close to defeating it and that he can still cut off one of its heads. He quickly launches an attack, declaring that he will become the Hydra Slayer, but his attack has no effect, destroying his own sword in the process. Just before he is devoured by the beast, he is saved at the last moment by Lost, who joins the fight alongside Narcina. Lost goes to help Armia, who is in very bad shape, and begins using a basic healing spell. Lyra quickly tells him it won't work, but Margulis and Siberia mention that's what he always did with them, so they aren't surprised. To Lyra's astonishment, it works, and Armia briefly regains consciousness, thanking Lost for coming. Narcina decides to face the Hydra with Lost. Knowing he won't be able to stop her, Lost only asks her to be careful and retreat if she's in danger. Meanwhile, Shig asks the rest of the lightning blades to stay put. Everyone agrees, including Margulis, who mentions that with his sword broken, he cannot fight. Narcina attacks first, and together with Lost, they manage to take down one of the Hydra's heads. Shig, for his part, uses his sword to sever another head. Seeing this, Margulis is shocked by Shig's strength and wonders why his sword doesn't break. Lyra immediately explains that it is a magic sword, a legendary blade of great power. The battle continues, but in a moment of distraction, Narcina is struck down and the Hydra takes her hostage, demanding a one-on-one duel with Lost. Everyone is shocked that the Hydra is intelligent enough to make such a demand, but Lyra explains that as monsters evolve, so does their intelligence. Thus, Lost accepts the challenge and charges at the Hydra. The scene suddenly changes, revealing an old man riding. Then we return to the fight, where Lost is seen collapsing to the ground, defeated. When Lost appears to have lost consciousness, he suddenly rises, emitting a mysterious aura. The voice of the old man says, "What should have remained dormant?" With a sinister appearance, Lost defeats the Hydra in an instant. After returning to his normal form, he collapses, leaving everyone in shock. Narcina wakes Lost up a while later. He immediately worries about her and Armia. Seeing that they are both okay, he relaxes. Lyra asks what happened, but Lost doesn't seem to remember anything. Margulis comments that he has always known Lost was very strong, and that with him, they can defeat any monster, even the boss of the Mardat Labyrinth. He suggests splitting the rewards between himself, Siberia, and Lost, claiming that the newcomers did almost nothing. As for Armia, they comment that she might not be salvageable, and suggest selling her, as she would at least be useful for something. Many people would pay for a doll like her, as she is not unattractive. This angers Lost and Narcina punches Margulis in the face. He threatens to report her to the guild for attacking another adventurer, but Shig and Lyra intervene, pointing out that they have witnessed a proposal for human trafficking, a serious crime. Eventually, Margulis and Siberia are arrested. Back at the guild, it is revealed that Shig is actually Sieg, a licensed adventurer from the royal capital. Sieg explains that licensed adventurers have authority over others, and that due to the city's security issues caused by certain adventurers, he was sent to investigate. His investigation led him to Margulis and Siberia, who will likely be expelled from the guild and sentenced to hard labor for human trafficking. Lost asks Sieg to speak privately. He pleads for Margulis and Siberia to be given another chance, arguing that while they can now seek fame and fortune, it probably wasn't always that way. Sieg agrees on the condition that they leave for the farthest city they can find, warning that if he sees them again, they will face the consequences. Sieg muses that in cities with many licensed adventurers, such as the royal capital, supervision can work, but in a rural area like Mardat, it is less effective. He decides to stay a little longer. Narcina apologizes to Lost and says that it was her idea to help Margulis, and that he will now be expelled from the guild. Laos tells her that while he had unfinished business with him, that no longer matters. At the inn, Sieg speaks with Lyra and mentions plans to monitor the adventurers' headquarters, as the royal capital suspects that the problem may be coming from the guild itself or its master. Sieg asks Lyra to team up with him again. She agrees on one condition, that she recruit Armia, as she cannot be left alone. Sieg agrees and mentions that he has discovered others worth keeping an eye on, especially one man, Laust. If you've reached this point in the video, don't forget to leave the word Exquisito in the comments. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.